The quiet before the miracle cameras were almost ready to roll. The lights on the set glowed gently. The makeup team made their final touches. And in the corner of the studio, Denzel Washington sat quietly, his fingers nervously clasped. It was supposed to be a simple live TV interview. Nothing unusual, nothing spiritual. Just a moment to talk about his new film and maybe share a story or two. But something in the air felt different. He couldn't explain it. At the same time, in another part of Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves sat in the back of a modest black SUV, his head resting against the window. The city buzzed with noise outside, but inside the car, there was only silence. The silence wasn't empty though. It was full. It was peaceful. It was the kind of silence that carries meaning. He held a small wooden cross in his right hand. It was worn, its edges smooth from years of being carried. His fingers rubbed the surface gently. His lips were moving, but no one else was in the car. He was praying, just a few hours ago. He hadn't planned to appear on TV. His team had turned down the invitation 3 times. But Keanu had felt something unusual when he woke up that morning. He had felt warmth in his chest, a strange stillness in his soul, and a sentence had come into his heart, clear and undeniable. Go to him. Those words played on repeat all morning. Go to him. Go to him. By noon, he called his agent and said he had changed his mind. He wanted to be on the show. The same one Denzel was scheduled to appear on. Now, in the dressing room backstage, Denzel looked at himself in the mirror. He was known as strong, steady, a man of faith and integrity. But lately, something had been bothering him. A quiet sadness had crept in. He had not told anyone, but his mother had been sick for weeks, and the doctors had not given much hope. He had prayed, yes, but sometimes, even the strongest believers feel far from heaven. Sometimes, even Denzel Washington questioned if anyone up there was still listening. A producer knocked on the door and said, "You're up in 5. Denzel took a deep breath. He stood and straightened his suit. He walked down the hallway toward the stage. As he passed one of the dressing rooms, he paused. He heard a voice. It was calm, almost whispering. He turned and looked through the slightly open door. Keanu Reeves was sitting alone, his eyes closed, whispering softly, "Guide me, use me." Denzel watched for a moment, puzzled. He wasn't expecting to see Keanu there. They weren't close, respected each other, yes, admired each other's work, but they moved in different circles. Keanu was mysterious, private, a quiet soul. Denzel was more open, expressive, and rooted in his faith, and yet, something drew him closer to that door. But before he could knock, the stage manager called out again, "Mr. Washington, we're living to." He turned away, not realizing this day would mark a turning point in his life. The show started with the usual flair, lights, music, applause. The host welcomed the audience with excitement and charm. Then Denzel walked out to thunderous cheers. He smiled, gave a small wave, and sat down. They talked about his latest film, his career, his thoughts on mentoring young actors. It was smooth, controlled, professional, but anyone watching closely would have noticed that his smile didn't fully reach his eyes. Something weighed on him. Then came the surprise. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said with a grin, "we have a very special guest joining us. Please welcome the one and only Keanu Reeves." The crowd roared. Denzel's eyebrows lifted in shock. Keanu walked out slowly, dressed in a simple black suit, no tie. His eyes looked gentle, almost thoughtful, as if he had just stepped out of a dream. He shook hands with the host, then turned to Denzel and embraced him. "You didn't tell me you were coming," Denzel said softly. "I wasn't going to," Keanu replied, "but something told me I needed to." The audience laughed lightly, sensing something unscripted, but they had no idea what was coming. The host welcomed them both into conversation. The topic turned to acting, to discipline, to loss. They talked about challenges in Hollywood, about staying grounded. Denzel shared his story about the early days of his career, about how he had once almost given up, how a stranger had told him to keep going, and how those words had stayed with him forever. Keanu listened quietly. Then the host asked, "Keanu, you've always been known as a man of mystery. You don't talk much about faith, but people say there's something deeply spiritual about you. Is that true?" Keanu paused. The room went quiet. He looked down at his hands, then slowly up at Denzel. And he said, "Can I be honest with you?" The host nodded. The cameras zoomed in. Keanu turned to Denzel. "I had a dream 2 nights ago," he said. "I saw a woman sitting on a hospital bed. She was older. Her hair was gray. Her hands were weak. She was praying. And I saw you, Denzel, sitting by her side. You were holding her hand. And you were crying." Denzel's smile vanished. Keanu continued, "I woke up and I heard these words in my heart. Jesus said to me, 'Go to him. Tell him his prayer has been heard.'" The studio fell silent. Denzel blinked. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Keanu's voice did not shake. He was calm, steady. "I didn't plan to be here," he said. "But something stronger than me told me. I had to tell you. Your prayer has been heard. She will be healed." The silence in the room was thick. Not awkward, not confused, but holy. Denzel's eyes filled with tears. He looked down, then up, then away. He rubbed his hands together, trying to hold it in. "How did you know?" he whispered. Keanu leaned forward and placed a hand on Denzel's arm. "I didn't," he said. But he did. The host was speechless. The crew behind the cameras froze. Viewers at home watched, leaning forward in their chairs, unsure if what they were seeing was real. And then, in front of millions watching live, Denzel Washington broke down. He wept, not from sadness, not from fear, but from the overwhelming presence of something bigger than them all. Keanu didn't say another word. He sat there, quiet, respectful, letting the moment breathe. Denzel wiped his eyes. He looked at the audience, then at the cameras, and then back at Keanu. "Sometimes," he said with a trembling voice, "we act like we have it all together. We forget that we're just men. Men who need hope. Men who need God." The audience stood not in applause, but in awe. The live feed didn't cut to commercial. It stayed. It captured something raw, something real. And somewhere, far away in a quiet hospital room, Denzel's mother smiled in her sleep. Her heartbeat was stronger, her breathing steadier. The doctors wouldn't understand what had changed by morning, but Denzel would know. And so would Keanu. And so would everyone who watched the moment. Two men met not as actors, but as brothers in faith. The miracle had only just begun. The prayer behind the curtain lights faded from the stage, but the energy stayed thick in the room. Even when the cameras stopped rolling, no one moved. The studio audience remained in place, silent. The crew looked at one another as if they had just witnessed something sacred. Something you couldn't plan, something you couldn't explain. Denzel sat back in his chair, still holding a tissue. His eyes were red, but not from pain. They were filled with awe, filled with something deeper. It was like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. A quiet burden he had carried alone now shared with someone who understood without needing to ask. Keanu sat beside him, silent and still. He wasn't trying to explain himself. He wasn't asking for attention. He was simply present, like a messenger who had delivered a letter and was now sitting peacefully, knowing the letter had been received. Backstage, people whispered, "Was that real? Did he really just say Jesus told him to come?" "I've never seen Denzel cry like that." The host walked over and gently placed a hand on both their shoulders. "Thank you," he said in a soft voice. "I don't know what just happened here, but the whole world felt it." Denzel nodded. "It wasn't planned, not by us anyway." Keanu looked up and gave a small smile. "Sometimes plans are made higher up." As they exited the stage, a young intern named Eva watched from the corner. She had been working at the studio for just 2 weeks. No one had really noticed her much. She was quiet, always holding a clipboard, always standing in the shadows. But today, she couldn't stop staring. Not at Keanu, not at Denzel. But at the moment itself. She had grown up in a family that had once believed. Her mother used to sing hymns while cooking. Her grandmother used to read the Psalms before bed. But somewhere along the way, life got hard. Too hard. The prayers stopped. The singing faded. And Eva, now 22, had stopped believing. Until today. As Denzel and Keanu walked past her in the hallway, She found herself whispering, "Thank you." Keanu turned. Their eyes met. He gave her a gentle nod. "Never stop hoping," he said. She blinked. "How did you?" But he was already walking away. Meanwhile, Denzel's phone buzzed. He looked down and saw a message from his sister. 3 words. Mom sat up. His heart skipped. He stepped aside and called immediately. She just sat up. His sister said breathlessly, "Her fever's gone. She asked for you, Denzel." She smiled. He didn't know what to say. His knees felt weak. He leaned against the wall. "We don't know how," she continued. The nurse came in and saw her eyes open. She said, "Tell my son I'm proud of him." Then she started humming the church song she used to sing when we were kids. Denzel closed his eyes. His hands trembled. "Thank you, Jesus," he whispered. Keanu stood nearby, giving him space. He didn't need to hear the call. He already knew. Later that night, the moment went viral. Clips of the show flooded social media, but they weren't just being shared because of the celebrity names. People were watching over and over because something in those few minutes felt different. It felt honest. It felt divine. People in comment sections wrote, "I don't know what I just saw, but it made me cry. I was doubting my faith, but this brought me back. This was more than television. This was truth." One clip showed just Keanu's words, "Your prayer has been heard." Another showed Denzel's face as he broke down. Both were being shared by believers and non-believers alike. And somewhere, in a small apartment in New York, a man named Carlos watched the clip on his old phone. He was a janitor. He had lost his son 2 years ago and hadn't stepped inside a church since. But as he watched Keanu speak those words, he broke down on the floor of his kitchen. He prayed for the first time in 2 years, and he didn't ask for anything. He just said, "Thank you for not forgetting me." The next morning, Denzel drove straight to the hospital. His mother was sitting up in bed, smiling. "Boy," she said with a weak laugh, "you been crying on TV?" He laughed and hugged her tight. "I had to, Mama." She touched his cheek. "The Lord heard you." Meanwhile, Keanu disappeared. He didn't speak to the press, didn't post anything online, didn't give interviews, but he did visit a small chapel on the edge of the city. There, in the back pew, he knelt and prayed for nearly an hour. No one disturbed him. An old man cleaning the altar watched him quietly. Later, he would tell his wife, "I think I saw a movie star talking to God today," but he didn't ask for anything. He just listened. In the following days, letters poured into the studio, handwritten notes from people who had seen the broadcast and been moved. A single mother from Texas who had planned to take her own life said the moment gave her hope. A young boy recovering from cancer said he believed again. A soldier overseas said the clip reminded him what he was fighting for. Even the host of the show, usually all charm and showmanship, opened his next broadcast with tears in his eyes. "What happened last week," he said, "wasn't just entertainment. It was a reminder that sometimes in the middle of all our noise, God still speaks." But not everyone was pleased. Some media outlets began to question if the moment had been staged. A headline read, "Publicity stunt or spiritual awakening." Others speculated about Keanu's mental health. Is Keanu okay? Has he gone too deep into a role? Why is he talking to Jesus now? Keanu remains silent. Denzel, however, wasn't. He went on a different show the next week and spoke from his heart. "I don't care what anyone says," he began. "I was there. I felt it. It wasn't acting. It wasn't planned. It was real. And it changed me." The host asked him, "What would you say to the skeptics?" Denzel smiled. "I'd say faith isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks quietly into a room, touches one heart, and leaves. And if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it." The clip went viral again. Eva, the intern, printed out the quote and taped it above her bed. Carlos, the janitor, played it again as he cleaned the floor of his building. Even the old man in the chapel whispered it under his breath as he swept. But behind all the inspiration, a storm was building. A large entertainment magazine announced they were releasing a tell-all piece about Keanu Reeves. They claimed to have anonymous sources ready to reveal secrets from his past, things he had kept buried. Their goal was simple: discredit the moment, turn the miracle into a mistake. As word spread, Denzel received a call from Keanu. "They're going to try and twist it," Keanu said calmly. "You worried?" Denzel asked. "No," Keanu said. "Because I didn't do it for them. And I didn't do it for fame." Denzel paused. "Then who did you do it for?" Keanu answered. "For the one who told me to go." But he didn't stop there. He had one more message to deliver. And this time, it wouldn't just change one life. It would change millions. But he had to walk straight into the fire to deliver it. Asterisk the firestorm and the whisper 3 days after the live TV moment that shook the world. A dark cloud formed above the very miracle that had touched millions. The world moved fast now. And in that speed, the beauty of truth was often buried beneath headlines, opinions, and algorithms. Keanu Reeves woke up to over 50 missed calls. His agent, his publicist, his lawyer, his studio contacts, they all wanted to talk about the same thing. A magazine article had dropped at midnight. It was written by a well-known entertainment journalist. The title screamed across the screen like a warning bell. "The Secret Life of Keanu Reeves, actor playing prophet." Inside were claims, anonymous sources, twisted details from decades ago. A friend from college saying Keanu had once questioned faith. A director from a past movie claiming he was strange and too spiritual. The article suggested that Keanu's emotional moment on live TV was rehearsed. It accused him of trying to create a new brand for himself. By noon, the article had over 2 million views. Talk shows began debating. Influencers posted reaction videos. The internet, once moved by his quiet strength, now swirled with doubt and drama. But Keanu said nothing. He didn't release a statement, didn't post a tweet, didn't go online at all. Instead, he sat in his small kitchen, sipping tea, listening to the rain tap on the window. He opened his notebook, the one he kept his personal thoughts in, and wrote only one line. "Truth does not shout, it whispers." On the other side of the city, Denzel was furious. He slammed the magazine on his table. "This is evil," he muttered. His wife looked up, concerned. "They're just afraid," she said gently. "Afraid of what?" he asked. "Of what they can't control." Denzel stood up. He paced the room. "I know Keanu. That man doesn't fake anything. He didn't ask for that moment. He was sent into it. I felt it. I lived it." She reached out and took his hand. "Then defend him. Tell the truth." Later that day, Denzel called the host of the original TV show. "I need 5 minutes of airtime. Just 5. The host didn't hesitate. "Anything you need." That evening, Denzel appeared alone on screen. No lights, no audience, just him and the camera. He looked directly into the lens and said, "We live in a world that's quick to build people up and even quicker to tear them down. 3 days ago, something happened on this very stage. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. It was a moment of divine honesty." He paused, his voice firm but calm. "And now people want to twist it, drag it through the mud, say it was a trick, a lie. But I was there, and I'm here to tell you the truth." He leaned in slightly. Keanu Reeves didn't speak for himself that night. He spoke for the one who sent him. The clip went viral. But so did the hate. The magazine doubled down. They posted a follow-up article, claiming that Denzel was too emotional to be objective and suggested the entire event was a publicity stunt for a future film. The pressure mounted. Keanu's single quotes team begged him to respond. They offered carefully crafted statements, scripted interviews, brand protection plans. But he kept saying no, until one night, he received a letter. Not an email, not a message, a real, handwritten letter. The envelope had no return address. Just a single word on the front, "Listen." Inside was a page written in soft, uneven handwriting. It read, "Dear Mr. Reeves, I don't know what people are saying about you. I don't care. What you said saved my life. I was sitting on the floor with a bottle of pills when I saw your clip. You looked into the camera and said, 'Your prayer has been heard.' I had just whispered, 'God, do you hear me?' And then you answered. Thank you. I'm still here. I'm alive because you listened." Keanu read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it and put it in his pocket. The next morning, he walked into the very studio where it all began. The host, surprised, greeted him with a quiet nod. "Are you here to make a statement?" the host asked. "No," Keanu replied. "I'm here to tell a story." The crew scrambled. The cameras were turned on, but there was no audience this time, just Keanu, sitting on the stage, looking directly into the lens. He spoke simply. "A lot has been said in the past few days. Some of it's true, some of it's not. But I'm not here to fight anyone. I'm here to share what happened." He paused, looked down, then up. "I never planned to be on this show. I wasn't even sure I'd say anything, but I felt something strong in my heart, like a soft voice saying, 'Go to him.' I believe that voice was Jesus." He looked directly into the camera. "You don't have to believe me, but I believe." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the letter. He held it up. "This is why I spoke. Not for likes, not for views, not for headlines, but because someone needed to hear it." He stood up and placed the letter on the table in front of him. "And if even one life was saved, then let them write whatever they want. The truth doesn't need defending." Then he walked off the stage. The host stood frozen, his eyes glassy across the world. People watched. Some cried, some clapped, some stayed silent, but no one ignored it. And in that moment, the storm began to break. The storm turns into a river for the first time in weeks. The noise began to quiet. The loud voices started to lose their grip. The headlines began to fade. Something else was rising. Not another scandal, not another trend, but a wave of peace. A river of stillness that began to flow from a single moment of truth. After Keanu's quiet message aired, people around the world started to share their own stories. One by one, they didn't shout, they didn't argue, they just wrote, "I was going to end my marriage, but after hearing Keanu, I prayed instead, and somehow we're still here. My daughter hasn't spoken in 2 years since her trauma. Yesterday she said, 'Mom, I want to live again. I left the church years ago. Last night, I walked in again and sat in the back row. I cried the whole time.'" The studio that once hosted flashy interviews and celebrity game shows started receiving handwritten letters by the hundreds. So many came that they had to bring in extra staff just to open and sort them. A small box was placed on the receptionist's desk with a handwritten sign that read, "Share your miracle." It filled up every day. But while the public slowly opened their hearts, the media world was not ready to surrender. The magazine that had attacked Keanu doubled down again. They planned to release a documentary to expose him further. They sent reporters to follow him. They reached out to former friends and co-workers. They even tried to approach his sister for comments. Keanu's single quotes as team begged him to take legal action. "We can shut this down," his lawyer said. "We can sue for defamation." Keanu listened quietly. Then he said, "But then I'd be spending my time fighting fire with fire. I'd rather plant trees." They stared at him. He smiled gently. "People who are angry are often just afraid. I don't want to feed their fear." But the pressure kept building. And then, something unexpected happened. A well-known journalist named Maria Gomez, respected for her deep and honest storytelling, reached out to Denzel. "I want to do a real interview," she said. "Not about Hollywood, not about gossip, about what really happened. The moment, the message, the man." Denzel agreed. The interview aired 2 nights later. It was raw, emotional, simple. Denzel spoke about his mother, about the moment she sat up, about how she told him in a weak voice that man was sent. Maria asked him, "Do you believe Keanu was sent by God?" Denzel nodded. "I do." "Why you?" she asked. "I don't know," he said softly. "But God doesn't choose perfect people. He chooses willing ones." The interview went viral. But this time, no one was laughing. No one was mocking. Even people who didn't believe began to watch in silence. And in one quiet neighborhood, a teenage boy named Malik watched the full clip on his phone. He had been bullied for years, told he was worthless, told his stutter made him sound stupid, told no girl would ever like him. He had stopped talking in class, stopped going out. He spent most days in his room, headphones on, escaping into games and movies. But after watching the interview, he did something he hadn't done in weeks. He walked into the kitchen and hugged his mom. He whispered, "I'm not giving up." And his mother, caught by surprise, just held him. Meanwhile, Keanu continued living simply. He spent most of his days volunteering at a shelter under a different name. No cameras, no press. He helped wash dishes. He handed out food. He sat and listened to strangers who had nothing to give him but their stories. But one day, as he was stacking chairs in the shelter hall, a man walked in wearing a black coat and holding a camera. He looked nervous. "Are you Keanu Reeves?" he asked. Keanu paused. Double quotes, yes. Double quotes. The man lowered his camera. "I'm not here to take photos. I'm sorry." Keanu tilted his head. "I'm the one who wrote that article," the man said. "The first one, the one that called you fake." Keanu said nothing. "I came here because my wife saw the interview with Denzel, and she asked me, 'What if you were wrong?'" He looked down at the floor, and I think I was. Keanu walked over slowly. The man looked up, expecting anger. But Keanu simply said, "Thank you for being here. You're not mad?" The man asked. Double quotes, "No, I prayed for you." The man began to cry. No one took a photo. Later that evening, the man wrote his own article. It was titled, "I Was Wrong About Keanu Reeves." It was shared over 5 million times in 3 days. The documentary was quietly canceled. The magazine issued a quiet apology in small print. But the world had already moved on. Not from the story, but from the noise. More and more people began to ask deeper questions. Who am I living for? What voice am I listening to? What if faith still matters? Churches reported more visitors. Therapists said their clients were opening up more. Schools started inviting speakers to talk about kindness, and people on social media began starting posts with, "I don't usually share this, but the biggest ripple came from something small." Keanu launched a project called Whispers of Hope. No website, no logos, no money asked. Just a request: write your story, share your whisper, remind someone they're not alone. And they did. People in Brazil, in South Korea, in Uganda, in Poland, in small towns and big cities, they shared. Meanwhile, Denzel visited the hospital every day. His mother's health continued to improve. The nurses said they'd never seen anything like it. On her birthday, she asked if Keanu could visit. So he did. He walked into her room with flowers and a book of Psalms. She smiled and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu knelt beside her. "I'm just the delivery man." She laughed softly. "Then I hope heaven keeps using you." Before he left, she asked him one more question. "What did Jesus say to you that morning before you came to the show?" Keanu looked out the window. Then, back at her, he said, "Tell him I see his tears, and none of them are wasted." She nodded, eyes full of peace. And for the first time since her illness began, she stood up without help. The voice that never leaves. A soft breeze moved through the open window of the hospital room as Keanu stood in quiet prayer. Behind him, Denzel's mother smiled gently, standing on her own 2 feet, holding the edge of her bed like it was a pulpit. Her body, once frail, was now gaining strength, and her voice, though still gentle, carried power again. "Tell me, son," she asked, "how long have you been hearing him?" Keanu turned slowly. "A long time, but I didn't always listen." She nodded. "None of us do. Not at first." He smiled, holding back something deep in his chest. Not sorrow, not joy. Something sacred. "When did you start?" he asked her. "The night I almost didn't make it," she whispered. "I felt something wrap around me like a blanket, and I heard him say, 'Not yet. Your boy still needs you.'" Keanu nodded. "He does." They both looked toward the window where sunlight poured in like a promise. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Denzel stood by the parking lot, pacing slowly. He held his phone in his hand. He had just received an offer. It wasn't for a film. It wasn't for a commercial. It was an invitation. A national faith summit. Leaders from churches, temples, mosques, and schools were gathering to talk about healing, unity, and hope. The organizers wanted Denzel to be the opening speaker. He had done award shows, galas, graduations, but this was different. He looked at the text again. It ended with one line: "Share the moment. The world needs it." He texted back, "Yes, but I'm not coming alone." 1 week later, Keanu sat on a small bench beneath a tree near the summit venue. He wore a plain white shirt, black pants, and a pair of old shoes. His notebook sat on his lap, the same one where he wrote down whispers he heard in the quiet. A child ran by chasing a balloon, laughing. An old man offered him water. A woman walked up with tears in her eyes and simply whispered, "Thank you." Before walking away again, Keanu just smiled and nodded. He didn't want the stage, but he knew the message wasn't done yet. Inside, Denzel was preparing. The summit had become the largest gathering of its kind in years. People from every background had flown in, not because they were promised music or miracles, but because they wanted something real. They wanted truth, and they knew something had changed since that live TV moment. When the event began, Denzel walked onto the stage slowly. He took a long pause before speaking. "I'm not here as a star," he began. "I'm here as a man who cried on national television." Some people chuckled gently, but most stayed quiet, listening. "You saw me break. You saw me feel something bigger than myself. And you saw another man, a man sent to deliver a message." He paused again, then raised a hand toward the entrance. "And he's here." The crowd turned as Keanu entered the room, walking down the center aisle like he was just a guest at someone's wedding. No fanfare, no music, no spotlight, just presence. People whispered his name, but no one reached for photos. It was like they all knew this wasn't a celebrity moment, this was a sacred one. Keanu stepped up beside Denzel. "I don't have a speech," he said softly, "just a whisper." He pulled out his notebook. "This morning, I wrote down what I heard in prayer." It was just one sentence. He opened the page and read aloud. "When they mock you, bless them. When they doubt you, love them. When they listen, speak the truth." The crowd stayed still. Some wept silently. "I didn't come to impress you," he continued. "I came to remind you. You are still seen, you are still loved, and your prayers are never wasted." He looked over at Denzel. "You said something that night that stayed with me. You said, we forget we're just men who need God." Keanu placed a hand on Denzel's shoulder. "And I want to add this. God never forgets we're his." There was no applause. Only silence. And then, slowly, people stood. Not clapping. Just standing. It was respect. It was reverence. Later that night, in a quiet room behind the stage, Denzel and Keanu sat side by side, their jackets off, sipping warm tea. "You know," Denzel said, "I've done over 100 films. But this," Keanu nodded, "this is the one people will remember." "What now?" Denzel asked. Keanu leaned back. "I go home. I plant more trees." Denzel smiled. "That's not just a metaphor, is it?" "Nope," Keanu said. "I actually plant trees." They laughed. But before they parted ways that night, Denzel handed Keanu a folded paper. "What's this?" Keanu asked. "A letter. From my mom." Keanu opened it. "Dear Keanu, you are not the whisper, you are the wind that carries it. Keep carrying." His eyes welled. In the following weeks, churches reported record baptisms. Therapists reported breakthroughs in silence. One prison reported that inmates started asking for Bible studies. A small town named a new youth center the Whisper House. But Keanu stayed quiet. He wasn't seen on TV again. Not yet. He returned to the shelter, to his garden, to his notebook. But he wrote one final entry on the last page. Jesus said to go, I went. Jesus said to speak, I spoke. And when Jesus says rest, I will. The notebook was closed. But the story wasn't over. Something new was coming. Something no one expected. The last whispered world had moved on. Or at least, that's what it seemed like. The news cycle had shifted. The internet had found new stories, new scandals, new debates. But under all the noise, something soft and powerful still lived. It had taken root. In homes, in hearts, in places too quiet for headlines. In a small park in Northern California, Keanu Reeves stood beside a tree he had planted 5 years ago. It had grown taller than expected. Its branches stretched out like arms open for an embrace. Children played. Nearby, birds sang overhead. Keanu touched the bark gently. He had been gone from the spotlight for months. No interviews, no social posts. He had said everything he needed to say. But heaven wasn't finished yet. Meanwhile, Denzel stood backstage at a packed auditorium in Chicago. He was about to speak at a youth event. The organizers had asked him to tell the story again, the story that had changed everything. He took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. "Let me tell you something," he began. "Miracles don't always look like lightning in the sky. Sometimes they look like a man walking into a room with a quiet voice and a message you didn't expect." He shared how Keanu had come to him, how he had heard a whisper and obeyed. "I cried that day," he said, "not because I was weak, but because someone reminded me that God still speaks." The crowd clapped. But later, backstage, Denzel's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello?" he answered. "Denzel," said a quiet voice. "It's time." It was Keanu. "Time? For what?" Denzel asked. "For the last whisper." 3 days later, the world paused again. Keanu posted a single video. His first post in nearly a year. The thumbnail was just a notebook and a tree behind it. The video started with no music, no graphics. Just Keanu's voice. "I didn't want to come back, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want the attention. I only ever wanted the message to matter." He paused. "But there's one more thing I have to say." He looked directly into the camera. "The whisper isn't mine. It never was. It belongs to you. It lives in you. Every time you forgive someone, every time you give without being asked, every time you choose love over pride, that's the whisper." He opened his notebook. "These are the last words I'll share publicly." He read them slowly. "You are not forgotten. You are not too far. You are not broken beyond repair. The one who made you still sees you, still loves you, and still has something for you to do." His eyes glistened. "This isn't a goodbye," he said. "This is a handoff." He closed the notebook, and the screen faded to black. At the end of the video were only 4 words. "Now it's your turn." The world responded. Millions shared the video, not with hashtags or fame-hungry captions, but with quiet words. "This saved me. I needed this today. I haven't cried in years." I heard the whisper again. Celebrities stayed silent, not out of disrespect, but because the moment didn't need more noise. It needed space. Churches, mosques, temples, schools, shelters, all showed the video. In villages without internet, people gathered around phones just to hear his voice. But Keanu disappeared again, this time for good. No one knew where he had gone. Some said he moved to the mountains. Others said he was helping children in South America. Some said they saw him walking alone near the coast, watching the sunset. But no one really knew, and no one needed to, because the whisper had already spread. 1 year later, a school in New Jersey built a garden in his honor. They called it the Listening Place. Inside the garden, a stone was placed under a tree. It had only 1 sentence carved on it. "The whisper was never mine." As for Denzel, he kept speaking. Not as a preacher. Not as an actor. But as a man who had once wept on TV and didn't care who saw. He wrote a book called None of Them Are Wasted. It became a quiet bestseller, not because it was promoted everywhere, but because one person kept handing it to another. Inside the first page, he wrote, "If this book found you, it's because someone heard the whisper." And in a small apartment in Seattle, a girl named Ruby, who had struggled with anxiety for years, opened her notebook and wrote, "I think I believe again." This was never about fame. It was about obedience. One man heard something. He followed. He spoke. He stepped into a moment that wasn't his to create, only his to carry. And because of that, the world changed. Not all at once, not with noise. But with a whisper.